Hello, my name is Raquel Lucero, and I'm doing my presentation on Canon and Nikon, comparing financial statements for the years 2013 and 2014. The two companies I have decided to compare are Canon and Nikon. They are both publicly traded companies that specialize in optics and imaging products, and are also Japanese multinational corporations. These two companies are widely popular when it comes to digital cameras, video recorders, and camera lenses. Consumers are often torn between the two brands because of their quality and brand names. Nikon began its journey in 1917 in Tokyo, Japan. It started off in Japan as Nippon Kogaku KK, an optical company. Some of its first products consisted of binoculars and telescopes, and by the end of World War II, its main focus was small cameras, which is where the name Nikon came from. It was the name of their first small camera. Canon also has a similar startup story. It began in 1933. It started off at Precision Optical Instruments Laboratory, also in Tokyo, Japan, very similar to Nikon. Canon did not have its own laboratories during this time. That's why it was part of Precision Optical Instruments Laboratory. Some of Canon's first cameras even had Nikon lenses, or Nikon today. It wasn't until 1937 that the company took on the name Canon, and in 1947 when it became Canon Camera Company Incorporated. Throughout the years, Canon continued to produce camera lenses and even office products such as printers. They were also the first to develop the first X-ray camera and first speed light synchronized 35mm flash and shutter camera, further driving the competition between the two companies. Some things that I would like to go over are the differences and similarities between these two companies. Despite the fact that they make the same products, I'd like to go over the differences between these two companies. One main difference I found between the two was stock market prices. The current stock price for Nikon for April 2015 is $14.77 in comparison to Canon, which is $37.58. Reviewing the last couple years of Canon stock, I had seen a steady increase for the past 2 years, while Nikon has been on a constant decrease. While Nikon has a stock price of $28 in April of 2013, it dropped drastically to $17 in August of 2013, where it has stayed and has slowly been steadily continued to decrease. Canon, on the other hand, has fluctuated in high stock prices, where its lowest stock price was at $28.94 in February of 2014. When comparing the assets between the two, we can see that Canon's total assets are up to 844,580 in yen. Nikon's total assets are 221,368 in yen. When calculating the return on assets for Canon, the total return is 5.9% and 7.2% for Nikon. The assets turnover for Canon is 83% and 36% for Nikon. Here we can see that Nikon's ROA and return on investments bring in more profit per dollar, while on the other hand, Canon assets turnover shows how much the company is selling in comparison to assets. The similarities between Canon and Nikon include the fact that they both create optical products such as cameras and camera lenses. They also have some similar competitors such as Sony, Fujifilm, Olympus, Pentax, and Lumix. They are both large multi-million companies, and they share the same markets such as US, Japan, China, and a few other markets. Now going over the cash flow statement. Viewing the cash flow statement for Canon, I noticed that it spent most of its cash on depreciation and amortization, which is very similar to the year 2013 numbers. For purchases of fixed assets, which is also close to the year 2013's numbers, in the notes located on the financial statement for Canon, I noticed that there was a section called Liquidity and Capital Resources, which explains the use of cash for the fiscal year of 2014. In this section, it states that the cash from operating activities had increased due to an equal increase in profits and working capital. Cash outflow decreased from 2013 as well as investing activities, but repurchasing treasury stock, which are things that coincide with information listed in the cash flow statement. Overall, the fiscal year in 2014 was very similar to the trends of 2013. As the company continues to invest and produce more products, Canon will continue to use more cash but will see profit. Canon, on the other hand, I noticed from the year 2013 to 2014 have major differences. The overall operating activities have increased in many areas, and over 20,000 in some areas. One area that caught my attention was the income taxes paid in 2013. They were $30,284, and in 2014 it shot down to $5,777. Going over the notes, it seemed that there was a new tax reform in Japan that affected the recent fiscal year, which was why the number had decreased so drastically. The gains on sales investment securities were another area that decreased. It went from 5,101 in 2013 to 1,453 in 2014. It seems that the company was focusing on paying down long-term debt and did not invest as much as the previous year, which includes inventory. I got this information from the notes in the statement. The decrease in inventory also led to a decrease in accounts payable, which started off at 35,821 in 2013 and then dropped drastically in 2014 at 13,942. The overall adjusted amount for operating activities had increased from 9,966. These are all in the million ranges. 2014, it went up to 39,493. Trying to understand what these numbers meant, I went back to the notes. It looks like the income taxes and trade was the product of the drastic increase in overall operating activities in the cash flow statement. Viewing the cash flow statement for Canon and seeing Nikon, it is clear that Canon is more financially stable. If the company continues to be negligent about investing and producing more inventories, the company will begin to suffer. Since both Canon and Nikon are Japanese corporations, I didn't expect to see many differences in the accounting policies. But I was wrong. I came across some differences in the investment area and where they report them. According to Nikon, the company records its investments in the limited liability investment partnership, whereas Canon records its investments in debt and marketable equity securities. Now, these all depend on how big the investments are and how long the investments have been with the corporation. Canon also classifies these investments as available for sale or held to maturity securities, which means it could be taken out of the financial statements if sold and manipulated to another part of the statement. Nikon classifies the investments depending on the management's intent and depending on what type of investment it is. Both Canon and Nikon have very specific and unique exceptions for their investments. Another accounting policy difference I found was the way in which they consolidated financial statements. Nikon prepares their statements with Japanese Generally Accepted Accounting Principles, or GAAP, while Canon uses US GAAP. Although they are in accordance to Japanese accounting principles, much of the statements I used in my paper have been altered for readers outside of Japan. Working with financial statements to compare similarities and differences between Nikon and Canon are only valuable if the statements are done with no biases or manipulated information. At the end of both financial statements, I was able to find a letter ensuring that the reports have been processed with accuracy based on managers' information and with the stockholders' best intentions. For Nikon, I was able to access a list of names for auditors and a brief history for the work. Canon provided brief information about its 5 auditors, but there were no names listed on the financial documents, but it did state that 3 of the 5 auditors that had no, quote, personal capital or business affiliations, end quote. Investing. After researching these two companies and becoming very familiar with their financial statements here of 2014 and 2013, I have enough evidence to support my investment in Canon. Canon has proved to be the bigger and more prosperous company in comparison to Nikon. Although they sell much of the same products, Canon has grown by creating office products such as printers and advanced cameras. The company has proven to a good return on shareholders' equity. Assets turnover for this company is also exceptionally high, with further support of my theory that this company can prosper if they can continue to take part in technological advances in the photography and filmmaking world. Thank you for viewing my presentation and have a good day.